Reborn back to the day my sister and I were sold, my sister pushed me toward the cold-blooded young general, saying, "My sister is beautiful and obedient, she will surely serve the general well." In my previous life, my sister, captivated by the general's handsome looks, pushed me toward a poor scholar instead. Later, the scholar excelled in the imperial exams, rose through the ranks, and became the prime minister. Meanwhile, my sister was tortured to death by the gloomy young general. So, in this life, she wants to choose again, but what she doesn't know is that I was born with a destiny of wealth and nobility. No matter whom I marry, that person will rise to great heights. What she knows even less is that I have been waiting for this day for a very long time. When my sister, with tears streaming down her face, begged the young general to buy me, I knew that she had also been reborn 3 months ago. Our father committed a grave crime, leading to the entire Shan household being convicted. All male members were sentenced to military exile, while the women were sold into servitude as lowborn slaves. My sister and I, being unmarried, were sent to the brothel of the teaching institute. Today is the day we are put up for sale. If someone is willing to buy us, it would be akin to saving us from this sea of suffering. On this day in my previous life, the young general had originally chosen me, but my sister pushed me off the high platform, breaking my leg, and she left with the young general as she had wished. However, once in the general's residence, she did not lead a good life but instead spent her days vying with a courtyard full of concubines. Later, the young general, feeling unfulfilled, followed the third prince in a failed rebellion and died as a criminal under a hail of arrows. My sister, once again, was sent back to the brothel of the teaching institute. At this time, my husband Wen Qinghe had already been appointed as the prime minister, second only to the emperor. And above all others, I had long since been freed from my status and become a titled lady. My sister was driven mad with jealousy. She knocked me unconscious and took me back to our old house, setting it on fire to perish together with me. When I woke up again, we had returned to this day. As the young general raised his hand and pointed toward us sisters, my sister pushed me forward, weeping and pleading, "General, my sister is beautiful and obedient, you will surely like her." The young general's gaze was as deep as the sea, his expression unreadable as he looked at me, then nodded. "Then it shall be her." I watched my sister crying bitterly, a faint smile curling at the corner of my lips. My sister held me tightly, her face filled with deep affection and reluctance. "Little sister, you must be obedient and sensible, serve the general well. If you live a good life, I will be at ease." Her sacrifice was truly moving, and those listening around her were all visibly touched, praising her as a good sister. But only I heard her whisper in my ear, "Jiyu Yenji is a rare good husband. Sister, enjoy your blessings, and when Qinghe is mine now." She was very pleased, thinking that by re-choosing her life, she would surely gain the same honor and glory as I did in my previous life, with a noble title bestowed upon her. But she didn't know that Wen Qinghe was not the man of military and literary talent as rumored, but a fool and a good-for-nothing addicted to drinking and gambling. The reason he was able to pass the exams and rise through the ranks was because of me. In other words, no matter who I marry, that person will rise to great heights. I followed behind Jiyu Yenji. He walked with his hands behind his back, neither too fast nor too slow. Along the way, any commoners who encountered him would nervously step aside. As I watched, I couldn't help but tear up, perhaps sensing something. Jiyu Yenji suddenly stopped, turned around, and looked at me. I met his gaze. Holding back my tears, "Jiyu Yenji, with me by your side in this lifetime, you will never be left feeling unfulfilled, nor will you ever become a treacherous rebel too." I followed Jiyu Yenji, and we didn't speak a word along the way. Once we arrived at the estate, he instructed the housekeeper to arrange my accommodation before leaving. I wasn't in a hurry to speak with him either, so I followed the housekeeper to my quarters. Along the way, she reminded me as per the rules not to disturb the general. If I were to anger him, being punished would be the least of my worries. Losing my life would not be worth it. I muttered, "If you don't let women find you, why keep so many concubines?" The general's mansion was vast, and as I walked through, almost every small courtyard housed women. Jiyu Yenji had no official wife. All these women were concubines. In my previous life, As soon as my sister entered the household, she was targeted by these women and suffered greatly, while Jiyu Yenji never once stood up for her. Sure enough, as soon as I had settled in, 7 or 8 women entered the room. They looked me over as if appraising goods, and one particularly alluring woman asked, "The daughter of a disgraced third-rank official, what crime did your father commit? Embezzlement, fraud, rebellion, or deceiving the emperor? No wonder she's a lady from a noble family." A woman in red stepped forward, pinching my face. "Her demeanor and looks are indeed better than ours. I wonder if her skills in serving men are also superior to ours." They all burst into laughter, sounding very frivolous. I finally understood why my sister in my previous life had clashed with all of them. These women gang up to bully newcomers. No matter who it is, they immediately give them a hard time upon entering. I slapped the woman's hand away and said coldly, "If there's nothing else, I need to rest. I'll visit each of you another day when I have the time." "How dare you hit me?" the woman retorted, slapping me across the face. "You little tramp, thinking you're still a lady of the house." I pressed my tongue against my burning cheek. In my previous life, I was mild-mannered. Even when my sister bullied me, I would swallow my anger and avoid causing trouble, fearing I'd be scolded for being difficult later. When I supported Wen Qinghe in his official career, over 12 years, I saw all sorts of demons and monsters, and I was no longer the Shenrong who could be easily manipulated back then. I immediately stood up and slapped her back, and what followed was a chaotic brawl that even I hadn't anticipated. As the fight went on, those women, disheveled and frantic, rushed outside and stood at the door screaming for help. I grabbed the hair of the woman who had slapped me earlier, dragged her to the courtyard gate, and threw her out. "From now on, if any of you dare to harass me again, I'll beat you every time I see you." I flung the handkerchief I had used to wipe my hands onto the woman's face and was about to turn and close the gate when I suddenly noticed Jiyu Yenji standing by the roadside. It was probably because someone reported to him that there was trouble here. I don't know when he arrived, but he was standing with his hands behind his back, watching me with an unreadable expression. My heart sank, thinking it was over. Before I could even speak to Jiyu Yenji, I had already left him with a fierce impression. I wondered if he would drive me away. I sighed, thinking it was truly an inauspicious start. The concubines also noticed him and swarmed toward him, crying and coquettishly complaining, "General, you must uphold justice for us." 3. Jiyu Yenji quietly looked at me, his eyes filled with a cold, murderous intent. I recalled my sister's description of him. When he is silent, you fear him. If he speaks, you fear him even more. My sister said that Jiyu Yenji is a ferocious beast that devours people without leaving a trace. At first, she even dreamed of gaining Jiyu Yenji's favor, but later, she dared not even think about it. Whenever she saw Jiyu Yenji, she wished she could take a detour. Under his gaze, everyone in the courtyard fell silent. Those who fight and brawl will receive 60 lashes. If they offend again, they will all be expelled. Jiyu Yenji glanced at me deeply without any emotion, then turned and left after receiving 60 lashes. I lay bored on the bed, flipping through a book. No wonder he's called the Iron-Faced General. He shows no mercy to anyone. I was drowsy when the maid came to report that my sister had come to see me. She carried 2 pounds of pastries, wearing a new dress, her face as radiant as peach blossoms, flushed with spring. The general's mansion has many rules. You can't be as carefree as before. Look at you, you've only just entered the mansion and have already offended so many people. You deserve those 60 lashes. He knew exactly what kind of person Jiyu Yenji was, yet he deliberately said such things just to provoke me. I couldn't be bothered to pay her any attention. My husband may be poor, but he treats me exceptionally well. Even though I ignored her, I couldn't stop her from showing off. The imperial examination is in a few months, and by then, I'll be the wife of a top scholar. Just thinking about it fills me with anticipation. You haven't even taken the exam yet, and you already know he'll place as a finalist. I raised an eyebrow at her. She was momentarily stunned, her eyes flickering. Then she said, "Of course, Qinghe is full of literary and martial talent, and not just a finalist even. The top scholar is possible." My sister's face was filled with confidence as she left, carrying 2 pounds of worthless pastries. Her pride evident, she really does treat Wen Qinghe like a treasure. No matter, her good days are about to begin. Recuperating from an injury is quite dull. After counting the days, I sent my maid out to inquire about my sister's situation. She returned and said Wen Qinghe had bought a courtesan from a brothel and brought her home as a concubine. My sister cried and made a scene, even beating the concubine. I couldn't help but laugh. This was only the beginning, and she was already losing her composure. Apart from being genuinely poor, everything Wen Qinghe presents about himself is false. After I recovered from my injuries, I went out with my maid and saw my sister. She was having tea with the wives of Wen Qinghe's classmates. On her wrist, which she occasionally revealed, I clearly saw large bruises. Wen Qinghe had hit her in my previous life. Wen Qinghe also hit me. At first, I was afraid and endured it, until I found Mr. Liu, and gradually gained confidence. The next time Wen Qinghe raised his hand, I struck back. After a few such incidents, Wen Qinghe no longer dared to act out in front of me. Sister is not usually one to be taken advantage of. But now, for the sake of Madame Tanhua, she has no choice but to endure. Miss, are you buying fabric to make clothes for the general? The maid asked me. I shook my head and said, I'll make it myself. The maid gave me a strange look, as I was buying fabric meant for men's clothing. Everyone is trying every possible way to get close to the general, but you're the most honest one, never going out, so the general has completely forgotten about you. I won't join in on that hustle, because I have a better way. As the new year approached, I changed into a newly made men's robe, put on a fake beard and a hat, and slipped out through the side gate of the general's mansion. After buying a jug of wine and 2 cuts of meat, I stopped in front of a dilapidated small courtyard, knocked on the door, and an old man with a white beard appeared behind it. The old man was in his 70s or 80s, with a head full of white hair and wrinkles crisscrossing his face, but his eyes were exceptionally clear. He scrutinized me and asked, "Who are you looking for, master? I've finally found you again." I bowed to him and explained that I was my father's student, and since I knew he had returned, I came to pay my respects. I made him his favorite dish, braised pork, and he indeed praised it endlessly. I didn't dare stay too long and told him I would come back tomorrow to cook for him again. I came for 7 consecutive days, and on the 8th day, I met someone at Mr. Liu's house. "Shirong," my master called out to me. "This is General Gu. He has come to pay his New Year's respects to me. Make more dishes today, and I will have a drink with General Gu." Finally, I met him. I carried 3 slabs of meat and 2 bundles of vegetables. Looking at Gu Yenji, who also glanced at me, paused for a moment, and then nodded. "All right, I'll go cook now," I said. For once the meal was ready, the 3 of us each took a seat. Mr. Liu and Gu Yenji discussed matters at court. Mr. Liu advised Gu Yenji, "Since the general can't do anything about it, why not simply do nothing? I heard the general has over 10 concubines, why not indulge in some pleasure?" Gu Yenji's current situation was quite awkward. He was once a highly esteemed minister favored by the emperor, but after his sister's plot to harm the imperial sons and concubines was exposed, she was confined to the cold palace. As a result, he was implicated, stripped of all his positions, and reduced to a mere figurehead in his previous life. From now until his rebellion and death 10 years later, his life was constantly hindered by his sister and nephew, leaving him perpetually frustrated and unfulfilled. During these 10 years, 2 events occurred that altered his fate. If I can change the course of these 2 events, I can alter his destiny. As for other matters, I have no intention of interfering. The first thing was the spring hunt, where the 3rd prince and the emperor encountered a wild bear in the forest. The 3rd prince abandoned the emperor and fled for his life alone. Upon returning, the 3rd prince, knowing he was in the wrong and being cowardly, actually claimed that Gu Yenji had taught him to do so naturally. The emperor, who had intended to reinstate Gu Yenji, never brought it up again. "Sir, please have some vegetables." I interrupted the heavy atmosphere and served Gu Yenji more food. "There's no chili added." "General, please eat more." Gu Yenji looked over and raised an eyebrow. "You know I don't eat spicy food. Everyone knows the general's taste." Gu Yenji glanced at me thoughtfully. After the meal, I offered to accompany Gu Yenji in a game of chess. And surprisingly, he didn't refuse me. Jiu Yenji's chess skills were excellent, his moves were clean and decisive. I was similar to him, so when we clashed on the board, we lost track of time. By the time I came to my senses, it was already dark. Jiu Yenji bid farewell to Mr. Liu, and I eagerly asked him, "General, shall we continue tomorrow?" He looked at me with a half-smile. "Do you enjoy playing chess with me?" "Yes, playing chess with the general is quite interesting." Jiu Yenji curled the corner of his mouth. "I have matters to attend to tomorrow." "What's the matter? Should I help you with it?" Jiu Yenji glanced at me and said softly, "I'll come tomorrow." The next day, Jiu Yenji really did come. After dinner, I brought out the chessboard and called him over to play. I chatted with him, rambling on about various topics, and Jiu Yenji responded intermittently, creating a surprisingly pleasant atmosphere. On the 5th day of the first lunar month, when I left the general's mansion through the side gate, I was actually discovered by the concubine I had fought with earlier. She reported it to the steward, who scolded me and changed the lock on the side gate that afternoon. I broke my promise and didn't go to Mr. Liu's place that night. In a fit of anger, I beat up the concubine named Liu Yao, but strangely, the next day, the lock on the side gate was removed again. When I happily went to Mr. Liu's place, Jiu Yenji was already there. "Didn't come yesterday?" he asked me. "Yeah, there was something at home," I said, shaking the vegetables in my hand. "I bought fish heads. We're having fish head tofu for lunch." As I was busy in the kitchen, I looked up and saw Jiu Yenji leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, quietly observing me. "Is the general hungry?" "The food will be ready soon," I said with a smile. He suddenly said, "I had Liu Yu take the lock off." I was taken aback, staring at him in astonishment. He was amused by my expression. "Just by wearing a fake beard and men's clothes, you think you can pass as a man?" I swallowed hard, my lips trembling slightly. "General, you saw through me as Shenrong from the start." Even though I thought my disguise was flawless, he looked at me with a teasing expression. "You overestimate yourself." It wasn't clever at all. I was about to speak when the kitchen knife in my hand slipped, instantly slicing off a piece of flesh from my finger. Blood immediately welled up. He walked over, held my hand, and frowned. "Rinse it with water first." I brought some medicine. He grabbed my hand, scooped water to rinse the wound, and poured medicinal powder onto it. The powder stung, and I cried from the pain. He glanced at me. "Does it hurt a lot?" I nodded. "It hurts as much as being whipped." I paused, looking at me. "Are you complaining about my unfair treatment?" I shook my head. I wouldn't dare to complain. "Whatever the general does is right." He pursed his lips. "You were fighting and causing trouble. Shouldn't you be punished?" I pouted. "Is the injury healed?" I nodded. "Yes, but it still hurts on cloudy or rainy days." He frowned slightly, his expression showing some emotion. "Let's go." I trotted after him. Where are we going?" "No cooking today." "To avoid having someone complain again that I'm mistreating her," he said, walking forward with his hands behind his back. I followed behind him with my eyes downcast. It started snowing outside, and he stopped to wait for me after fetching an umbrella from somewhere. I hesitated to approach, but he frowned, looking fierce. "Come here." I obediently followed, the street largely empty. He walked neither quickly nor slowly. The snow fell softly on the umbrella paper, making a faint rustling sound, as if isolating us from the rest of the world. "I bought you not for any other reason. You don't need to go to great lengths to please me." After a long silence, he suddenly said, "Aside from becoming my concubine, you can make any other request you wish." I lowered my head, thinking this was a great opportunity, and was just pondering how to bring up the spring hunt with him when he suddenly spoke in a tense, somewhat displeased tone. "Why are you crying?" I wasn't crying, and I was about to explain, but as I blinked, a tear actually welled up in my eye, and I looked at him. His brow gradually furrowed, and he sighed. "Forget it. Do as you please." "Really, as I please." I smiled. "General, I'm hungry. Please treat me to a meal." He glanced at me sideways, sighing in resignation. "You're pushing your luck." I followed behind him with a smile. "I wanted to eat fish head today, but I didn't get to. However, since we're leaving, the master won't have lunch." "You talk too much." He tilted the umbrella slightly towards me. "I've already sent someone to cook for the master." I gave him a thumbs up. The general thinks of everything. I held back my laughter. You're quite good at flattery. 5. As the spring hunt drew nearer, I stopped going to the teacher's place and instead waited at home for Gu Yenji. Every day outside the study, I knocked on the door several times before a voice responded from inside. Pushing the door open, Gu Yenji looked at me, his gaze then falling on the food box I was carrying. I approached with a smile. It's the soup you like best, General. Drink it while it's hot. Gu Yenji propped his cheek on his hand and looked at me. I handed him the bowl and asked, do you want me to feed you? Gu Yenji actually rolled his eyes at me, took the bowl, and drank it himself. I sat across from him, watching. Even the way he drank the soup was graceful, every movement exuding an air of elegance. Have you seen enough? Gu Yenji asked me. No, I shook my head, then immediately regretted it, blushing as I looked at him. He lowered his gaze to his tea and said calmly, I am not a suitable match, you need not waste your thoughts on me. I nodded. Then, how about this? Let me stay in the estate for 2 years, and after that, I will leave. Is that acceptable? Gu Yenji looked at me with confusion because in 2 years, the 2 major events that will affect your fate will no longer exist, and I can retire with my mission accomplished. I promise, I'll definitely leave in 2 years, and I won't bother you. He frowned slightly, his tone a bit sharp. As you wish. With his assurance, I immediately felt at ease. He wouldn't drive me away before I achieved my goal. Thank you, General, I'm off. This way, I wouldn't have to deliver soup to him every day. I could just remind him when the time came. But he showed up at my courtyard several times. I went over and asked, is there something you need, General? He glanced at me, then clasped his hands behind his back and said, this is my own home. Can't I just take a stroll? Oh, of course, General. Please take your time. He gave me a deep look and then left with a flick of his sleeve. The maid asked curiously, why does the General seem a bit unhappy? Probably because he hasn't been reinstated to his official position yet, and is still feeling down. I sighed. It'll be fine in a few more days. The next day, while taking a walk, I ran into Gu Yenji again. We met face to face, and I stepped forward to greet him. Gu Yenji coughed a couple of times and deliberately chatted with me for a while, coughing several more times in between. The General seems to be ill, the maid spoke with concern. Then I'll make him some cooling soup tomorrow. I sighed. The next day at noon, I made soup again and brought it to Gu Yenji. He seemed to be in a very good mood. This soup is great, keep it up tomorrow. I stared at him in astonishment and couldn't help but taste a bowl myself. There was nothing special about it. After returning, my maid was extremely surprised. The General has never drunk soup given by others. That's impossible. Didn't Lu Yao and the others send some? The maid giggled mysteriously, pulling me to watch the excitement outside the main courtyard. Sure enough, we saw Lu Yao carrying a food box heading to the main courtyard, but she was turned away before even entering the gate. Maybe the General is busy today and doesn't want to be disturbed, I whispered. After Elviao was driven away, she was seething with anger and actually gathered a gang to cause trouble for me again, with a bunch of hypocritical sisters and siblings. They even slipped something into my teacup. Of course, I didn't drink it and drove them all away, but I never expected to still fall into their trap. The next day, my face broke out in many red rashes. Upon investigation, I found out they had sprinkled some unknown powder on my pillow, trying to ruin my appearance. Furious, I took the pillow and went to confront them, pressing their faces against it and rubbing them. You never learn from your mistakes. If you want to ruin my face, then let's all be ruined together. No one gets away with it. The courtyard was filled with cries and wails. Just like last time, they wept with disheveled hair, demanding that the General take action. I felt relieved after the fight, but Gu Yenji was also alerted, reenacting the scene. I didn't dare to approach Gu Yenji, thinking to myself, if he wants to whip me, so be it. I'm not afraid of being driven out either anyway. I had to vent this pent-up anger. Gu Yenji said coldly, follow the rules. Each of them gets 60 lashes and is to be expelled from the estate. He flicked his sleeve and left, and the guards came forward to take Lu Yao and the others away, leaving only me behind. I was utterly stunned, not just me, but Lu Yao and the others were equally astonished. General, Why didn't the general punish Shenrong? The general is biased. General, we know we were wrong. Jiyu Yenji didn't even turn his head, leaving Lu Yao and the others crying where they stood. My maid said excitedly, the general treats you differently. In the afternoon, a doctor came, examined my face, left some ointment, and instructed me on how to use it. Green Waste and the others were truly driven out. After they left, my days became comfortable, no one to quarrel with, no disturbances, and there were good dishes and meals. Even the fabric for clothes increased. The maid smiled and said, since you don't go out, you wouldn't know, but outside, it's rumored that the general is captivated by you. For your sake, he drove away a whole courtyard of women, favoring you alone, favoring me alone. If it weren't for my thick skin, he would have driven me away days ago. In the evening, Jiyu Yenji returned and handed me an invitation. Madam Wang is hosting a flower viewing banquet, and your sister will also be attending. Should I go? Is my status appropriate? Although I have been released from my status, I am still the daughter of a convicted official, unfit for public appearances. 6. Never did I expect that Jiyu Yenji would accompany me to Madam Wang's flower appreciation banquet. As soon as we arrived, everyone curiously scrutinized me. Jiyu Yenji whispered to me, are you afraid? The ladies and young ladies attending the banquet I had met before when I accompanied my mother on outings. However, times have changed, and my current status is awkward. If the general isn't afraid, what do I have to fear? I said with a smile. He snorted coldly and muttered, they should be the ones afraid of me. I burst out laughing, thinking that was true. Nowadays, Jiyu Yenji was notorious, a man everyone feared. Then the general and I are truly the kind of people who make everyone uncomfortable when they see us. Jiyu Yenji suppressed a laugh and turned to leave. I watched him go, and when I turned back, I saw my sister's cold gaze. Seeing me looking at her, she changed her expression and stepped forward with a smile. I never expected that not only would Jiyu Yenji dismiss his concubines for your sake, but he would also bring you to this flower viewing banquet. It seems my worries were unnecessary. I smiled and said, what were you worried about, sister? Her expression turned cold, but she forced a smile. However, don't get too carried away. Jiyu Yenji is unpredictable. He may be kind to you now, but tomorrow he might turn on you and have you killed. Oh, thank you for the reminder, sister. I tilted my head to look at her. But how do you know that General Jiyu is unpredictable? I remember you didn't know him before. Sister's face stiffened, and she forced a dry laugh. It's common gossip in the capital, everyone knows about it. That gossip isn't true, I said with a smile. The general is very gentle. Sister's facade of warmth finally cracked, and she waved her sleeve dismissively. Even if he's gentle, you're still just a concubine. What are you so proud of? If you're so capable, make him marry you. She swept away with a flick of her sleeve, seeing her angry back. I felt in high spirits and went to greet the ladies with a smile. They wanted to avoid me but were constrained by propriety, so their attitudes were lukewarm. I didn't mind, focusing my attention solely on Lady Yang. Lady Yang is the wife of Commander Yang, the head of the Imperial Guard. Due to her husband's special position, Lady Yang rarely socializes among the ladies' circles. Additionally, both she and Commander Yang come from humble backgrounds, so their absence also implies being ostracized. My goal today is clear, because for the upcoming spring hunt, all the guards are arranged by Lord Yang. In my previous life, after the incident occurred, only the Emperor, the third prince, and Lord Yang were present at the scene, and Lord Yang did not utter a single word in support of the third prince. This led to the third prince, in a state of panic, recklessly dragging Jiyu Yenji down with him. This time, I intend to build a good relationship with Lady Yang, so I catered to her preferences based on my memories and understanding of her from my past life. Within half an hour, she had already disregarded the disparity in our status and affectionately called me sister. On the way back, I took the initiative to tell Jiyu Yenji about the banquet. Madam Yang mentioned that they planned to go on a spring hunt on the 22nd day of the first lunar month. Her husband has been quite busy lately. Jiyu Yenji replied indifferently, there's the imperial examination this year, so His Majesty has moved it up by half a month. The Emperor hadn't invited him to accompany him, and Jiyu Yenji had no desire to go either. After all, even if he had been stripped of his official position, he would have plenty of ways to attend if he wanted to. Will the general be going? I asked, feigning excitement. I've heard there are golden pheasants in Yulon Mountain, and I'd really like to see them. Jiu Yenji looked at me with some surprise, because my words were both abrupt and overstepping boundaries, something I wouldn't normally say. He found it strange. I pretended to be clueless and looked at him expectantly. Then I'll have someone bring you a golden pheasant, Jiu Yenji said. Alas, it seems he still doesn't want to go. Now, we can only hope for Madame Yang. Fortunately, Madame Yang did not disappoint me. A few days later, the transfer order was delivered to the general's residence. Commander Yang invited Jiu Yenji to coordinate the spring hunt security deployment. When the transfer order arrived, I was in Jiu Yenji's study. He held the letter and quietly looked at me. You've been visiting Madame Yang just to get me to go to the spring hunt. I nodded. I want the general to personally hunt a pheasant for me. Jiu Yenji stared at me intently, remaining silent for a long time. I breathed a sigh of relief. With Jiu Yenji here, the events of the previous life would certainly not happen again. Before I knew it, the spring hunt arrived. Jiu Yenji left for the hunting grounds a day early, and he didn't inform me before leaving. I didn't mind, I just waited for news from him in the residence. I clearly remembered that in my previous life, the incident occurred on the second day of the spring hunt, after which the emperor returned to the capital. I waited in silence for 3 days, and when no news came back, I breathed a sigh of relief. After waiting for half a month, Jiu Yenji finally returned, carrying a pheasant in his hand. I lifted my skirt and ran towards him. The general is back. He stopped and laughed, slightly opening his arms. I rushed over, pointing at the pheasant in his hand. The general is amazing. You really caught a pheasant. He retracted his hands, and his smile faded. Do you like this chicken so much? Like, good looking, beautiful, I called out to Liu, the steward. Quick, tonight we're having chicken. Jiu Yenji looked at me with a strange expression. I was too happy to notice Jiu Yenji's expression. I had changed the course of events, and if all went well, Jiu Yenji should soon be reinstated to his former position to resolve the remaining matter. I can retire in triumph. Indeed, 3 days later, Jiu Yenji was reinstated to his original position, and the emperor treated him as he always had on the first day he returned from work. I personally prepared a few dishes to wait for him. He looked at me and said, "You seem happier than I am." Of course, it's a joyous occasion for everyone that my husband, the general, has been reinstated to his position. I smiled at him. Jiu Yenji took a sip of wine, his cheeks slightly flushed. 7. At the end of February, Jiu Yenji began to busy himself with preparations for the spring imperial examinations. By mid-March, when the examinations started, the entire capital seemed to fall into a quiet stillness. "Miss, today I saw your sister book a banquet at Spring Intent Pavilion for the end of the month. It seems that Mr. Wen is quite confident of passing the imperial exams," the maid said. I sipped my tea, secretly amused with Wen Qing and his incompetence. Not to mention being a top scholar, he wouldn't even pass as a regular graduate. As for why he was a top scholar in my previous life, it was because after I became a disciple of Master Lu guessed dozens of exam questions. I answered them, Master Lu revised them, and eventually had Wen Qing memorize them all. The coincidence was that Master Lu guessed correctly, so Wen Qing became a top scholar in this lifetime. Without me and Mr. Lu, he wouldn't have been able to pass the imperial examinations. Only my sister still genuinely believes that Wen Qinghe is both talented and handsome, and that in my previous life, I was lucky to marry him at the end of the month, when the imperial rankings were announced. As I had expected, when Qinghe failed to make the list, he didn't care, because he knew his own worth, but my sister couldn't bear it. She had long been prepared to become the wife of a scholar or even the wife of a prime minister, but now her dream had shattered. She was unwilling to accept the outcome and actually went to the Drum Tower to proclaim her grievance, accusing someone of cheating during the spring imperial examinations. This incident caused quite a stir, and the court thoroughly investigated the matter. Of course, no issues were found in the end, and both my sister and Wen Qinghe were imprisoned in the Dali Temple the next day. My sister sent someone to deliver a letter, requesting to see me. This was my first time entering the prison of the Dali temple. My sister sat on the ground with disheveled hair, her face clearly marked with injuries. When Qinghe crouched in the corner, his face and arms scratched. It seems I missed a marital battle. Shenrong, my sister saw me and rushed over angrily. If not for the fence between us, I think she would have wanted to kill me on the spot. I ask you, why is it different? I frowned. What's different? Don't play dumb with me. At the last flower viewing banquet, I noticed you getting close to Lady Yang. Just like me, you've been reborn too. My sister reached out to hit me. Why didn't Wen Qinghe pass the imperial examination with high honors? In our previous life, he was the third-place scholar. It must be you who tampered with it, right? Looking at her, I suddenly remembered when I was 5 years old, playing with her in our grandmother's room. She broke our grandmother's vase, and fearing blame, she claimed I had done it. When our grandmother slapped my palm, she also slapped me across the face, saying I was mischievous and unruly, bringing shame to the eldest branch of the family. She has always been like this, never changing. All the good things are hers, and whenever trouble arises, she immediately pushes it onto others. I sneered. Listen to yourself. What are you saying? How could I possibly tamper with the imperial examinations? Then why? She shouted. Want to know why? Let me tell you, I was born under a lucky star. No matter who I marry, they will rise to great heights, I whispered. So, in my previous life, when Qinghe was able to pass the imperial examinations because he married me, I helped him achieve success. I assisted him in rising to prominence. It was his good fortune to meet me, not my good fortune to marry the Prime Minister. This lifetime, since you married him, he naturally doesn't have that good fortune anymore. My sister glared at me fiercely. Suddenly, when Qinghe from the corner rushed out, gripping the railing and staring at me without blinking. Have we met before? Why do I feel so familiar with you? I gave Wen Qinghe a deep look, then turned and walked away. My sister and Wen Qinghe called after me from behind, but soon they started arguing with each other again, each blaming the other. A few days later, the punishment for my sister and Wen Qinghe was decided. Someone intervened on their behalf, and my sister was sentenced to 30 strokes of the cane, while Wen Qinghe was banned from taking the imperial examinations for life. When Wen Qinghe was banned from taking exams, he stopped pretending altogether. Every day, he went out drinking and carousing with his disreputable friends, and whenever he came home and saw his sister, he would fly into a rage, ignoring her serious injuries. He would beat her up to vent his anger. That night, I had a dream. In it, I was back at the Shen residence. Father returned from work, and the three of us siblings gathered around him to talk, while Mother sat to one side, smiling as she watched us. When I opened my eyes again, I was in tears. Jiyu Yenji was very busy, and I hadn't seen him for several days. Then one day, a maid came back to tell me that Wen Qinghe had been arrested and sent to prison, imprisoned again. I was taken aback. For what reason? The maid replied, he caused a disturbance at Drunken Spring Pavilion while drunk and accidentally killed a courtesan. I sighed. In my previous life, Wen Qinghe was at the height of his success at this time, admired by everyone as a talented and renowned figure. In this life, he has completely sunk into the mire, likely with no chance of ever rising again. 2 more days passed, and Jiyu Yenji suddenly returned from his office early. As soon as he came back, he called me to his study. When I pushed open the study door, I was surprised to see my sister there as well. It turned out that the one who had protected them was Jiyu Yenji. When my sister saw me, tears instantly fell from her eyes, looking pitiful and vulnerable. Ronga, your brother-in-law, I have nowhere else to go. I could only come to you and the general. As she spoke, she knelt down in front of me with a thud, crying as if her heart were breaking. Rongrong, in this world, you are the only family I have left. My sister was crying and pleading, of course not really begging me, but putting on a show for Jiyu Yenji. In her previous life, she had spent 6 years in the Jiyu residence, so she should have known that Jiyu Yenji responds better to softness than to force. Perhaps she also knew that Jiyu Yenji couldn't resist a woman's tears. I knew this because I had used this trick on Jiyu Yenji several times before, and it had worked every time. I think that if such a beautiful woman like my sister cries, it would be even more effective as expected. Jiu Yenji's heart ached, and he furrowed his brows, looking at me. Shenrong, it's up to you whether to keep her or not. You're asking me insincerely. If you didn't want to keep her, why bring her back? This is the general's home, so of course, the general has the final say. I muttered in a spot where Jiu Yenji couldn't see. My sister gave a smug smile and whispered to me, I bet he'll let me stay. Sister, he was once my husband too. Today, when he saw me at the door, he brought me back with him. I frowned, flicked my sleeve, and turned to leave. Shenrong, Jiu Yenji called out to me. I paused and said, I don't want her to stay. If you wish to keep her, General, then do as you please. As soon as I finished speaking, I heard Jiu Yenji say, Liu Yu, please escort her out. I was taken aback and turned around in surprise to look at Jiu Yenji. Did he really just ask for my opinion? Sister was obviously also surprised and called out General, but Jiu Yenji completely ignored her. It's you. Sister looked at me, her eyes filled with malice. Ever since we were young, you've been jealous of me, unable to bear to see me do well, and now you're still the same. You vile woman. She stepped forward, raising her hand to strike me, but before I could even push her away, she was already sent flying like a kite with its string cut. Jiu Yenji looked sternly at his sister and reprimanded, Come, throw her out. No, General, you can't treat me like this. In our previous life, you and I were husband and wife. She married Wen Qinghe. She doesn't love you, General, his sister screamed as Jiu Yenji watched his sister being dragged away. He frowned slightly. He said you married Wen Qinghe. I shook my head. How could that be? She's gone mad, spouting nonsense. Jiu Yenji was still not very happy. I quickly ran away, however. When Jiu Yenji's aloofness wasn't directed at me, it felt really good. Having prevented the first crisis, I began to ponder Jiu Yenji's second, and most difficult, challenge to overcome, his sister and nephew in his previous life. It was precisely because of Consort Zhuang and the third prince that he remained perpetually frustrated and unfulfilled, ultimately being dragged onto the ship of rebellion by the third prince. Meeting a tragic end, it would be difficult for Jiu Yenji to abandon his sister and nephew. Jiu Yenji lost his mother at a young age and was raised by his sister. To him, his sister's kindness is greater than the heavens. However, neither the third prince nor Consort Zhuang are the main figures in this matter. I am waiting for that person to appear. Before this, I need to make some preparations for the future, so I went to find Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu was originally my father's advisor in my previous life. After I found him, I begged to become his disciple. In this life, I did not become his disciple, nor did I approach him using the identity of the second mission. Now, I don't want to hide it from him. When the teacher saw me take off my hat, he smiled and said, When second miss came, I recognized you right away. How could there be such a handsome man in this world? I was extremely embarrassed, thinking of what Jiu Yenji had said that day. So, cross-dressing as a man is just fooling myself. Mr. Lu burst out laughing. Mr. Lu, I said with a smile, I want to start a business. Mr. Lu was both surprised and delighted, eagerly asking what kind of business I wanted to start. Silken tea, I whispered. I also want to engage in maritime trade and have already looked into a few ships, but at the moment, I have no one I can trust to handle it, and I can't step forward myself. So, Mr. Lu agreed without hesitation, saying he was willing to represent me in my past life. I clearly remember that the emperor would open maritime trade in the middle of the year, though not for long. Later, due to rampant piracy along the coast, the trade was shut down again, but this 1 year would be enough. In my previous life, the merchants who caught this wave made a fortune, and I, as well as Jiu Yenji in the future, will need money. But, do you have money? Borrow from the general, I said with a smile. Mr. Lu pointed at me. Second miss is getting bolder and bolder, daring to borrow money from the general. When I returned in the evening, I made several kinds of pastries, waiting for Jiu Yenji. But he didn't come back until midnight. I dozed off in the living room, in the second half of the night. Someone gently tapped my shoulder. Why aren't you going back to your room to sleep? The general is back. I stuffed all the pastries on the table into his hands. Are you hungry? Have some before you sleep. General, Jiyu Yenji had no choice but to take the 3 or 4 boxes of pastries, waiting for me until midnight. Just to give me these pastries, he sat down, wearing an expression that said he had already seen through me. Waiting for me to continue, I poured him some tea and handed him a pastry. General, lend me some money. Jiyu Yenji laughed. I knew you weren't being so kind. I am, though. I haven't seen you in days, and I'm especially happy to see you tonight. Smooth talker. He asked, how much do you need? I raised one finger. 10,000 taels. For 1 year. Next year, I'll repay you 100,000 taels. Jiyu Yenji glanced at me. Who are you doing business with? I'll have someone go over it for you. Afraid he wouldn't lend me the money, I walked behind him, steeled my heart, and started massaging his shoulders. With Mr. Liu doing maritime trade, I've already chosen the ship, just waiting to pay for it. I leaned down to look at him. General, everything is ready. We just need your favorable wind to push us forward. Jiyu Yenji glanced at me, his eyes flickering, and his ears quickly turned red. He stood up to avoid me and walked out, saying as he went, Liu Yu, give Miss Shen 2,000 taels. My eyes lit up. General, are you lending this to me? He took a step back, as if afraid I would pounce on him like a predator. Yes, borrow it. If it's not enough, ask Liu Yu. He seemed a bit embarrassed, and I couldn't help but laugh. Thank you, General, you are the best person in the world, and I will definitely repay you well. Jiyu Yenji quickly disappeared into the courtyard. Liu Yu smiled and handed me a 10,000 tael silver note, whispering, only you can speak to the general like that without making him angry. I smiled, thinking Jiyu Yenji was quite interesting. Everything went smoothly, and Mr. Liu and I became busy. Sometimes, I would still disguise myself as a man and accompany Mr. Liu to discuss business. Everything was ready, and in mid-June, the Emperor indeed issued an order to lift the maritime ban. We had long been prepared, hiring the best crew and buying ships at the lowest prices, making us the first to set sail. 2 months later, when the ships returned, we had tripled our profits. I brought a pile of imported goods to find Jiyu Yenji. These imported goods, I specifically saved for the general. I placed them one by one on his desk. The general can use them personally or give them as gifts. He looked at me. You're so tanned. Did you go on the ship yourself? I touched my face and then looked at myself in the mirror closely. Indeed, I had tanned quite a bit. It's okay. I'm still beautiful even if I'm darker, right? Jiyu Yenji toyed with the snuff bottle I had brought, letting out a soft hum. From his nose I leaned in closer and said with a smile, General, are you free tonight? I'd like to treat you to a meal. Jiyu Yenji raised an eyebrow, made some money and feeling generous now. Treating you to a meal doesn't require generosity. Whenever you want to eat, I'll treat you. Jiyu Yenji's lips curved into a slight smile. I had reserved several tables at the restaurant. As soon as Jiyu Yenji arrived, Mr. Liu and the staff all stood up. I introduced him to everyone, and one of the cooks, an aunt, quietly asked me, General Jiyu, isn't he your husband? I quickly covered the aunt's mouth. Don't say such things. The general is not my husband. The aunt was unconvinced. Boss, such a handsome man like the general, could it be that you don't fancy him? I don't look down on him. It's him who doesn't look up to me. I hushed. Eat quickly. Don't talk about it. The aunt looked at me pitifully. Master, then use some feminine wiles to seduce the general. It was not easy to get the aunt to stop talking about it. I took a sip of tea to calm myself, and when I turned around, I didn't notice when Jiyu Yenji had already taken a seat beside me. He was sitting upright, drinking tea, his face expressionless, but his ears were red. When did the general arrive? I twitched the corner of my mouth. He glanced at me, suppressing a smile. It's been a long time. I covered my face, wishing I could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Behind me, someone burst out laughing. The next day, I quietly packed my bags and left. It was better to avoid the situation for a while. It was just too awkward. I didn't return until after the new year, selling all the ships before the maritime ban took effect. Mr. Liu and I then headed back to the capital. Before returning to the general's mansion, I went to get the money and sought out Jiyu Yenji. General, I've come to repay the debt. He looked up from the piles of documents and glanced at me. Smiling, I placed the wooden box containing the banknotes in front of him, the 10,000 taels you lent me, along with the interest I owe you, are all here. He flipped through it. 120,000, a tenfold increase. You don't need to be polite, General. There will be many places where money will be needed in the future, and besides, I sat down in front of him, there are many aspects of my business where I will rely on you. This money can be considered as a share of the profits from your influence, if he is to assist the third prince in the succession struggle. 100,000 taels will not be nearly enough. Then you'll have to make good use of my influence, or else you'll be at a loss. Gu Yenji smiled. He rarely smiled, and I realized he had a very handsome smile. I was momentarily stunned, staring blankly. Gu Yenji coughed lightly, his gaze falling on my clothes. I looked down and only then noticed 2 holes torn in my sleeves. I was utterly embarrassed. He raised an eyebrow. The palace has bestowed many fabrics for women's clothing, and I'm giving them all to you. I was taken aback. Is the general getting married? Why would the palace suddenly reward you with women's fabrics? Gu Yenji's face darkened, and he ignored me when I returned to my room. I was stunned. I had thought there would only be a little fabric, but to my surprise, it covered the entire table, 20 or 30 bolts in total. The maid smiled and said, "While you were away, the general brought these back. Sometimes he brought 1 bolt, sometimes 2. Did the general bring them himself?" The maid nodded. Later I found out that these fabrics were not given to him by the palace at all. He had taken them from the Imperial Household Department on his own initiative. Whenever the latest fabrics arrived from Jiangnan, he would go and take some now. The people at the Imperial Household Department avoid him whenever they see him, and even the Imperial consorts in the rear palace have started complaining about Gu Yenji because he always picks the best ones. 10 Without engaging in maritime trade, Mr. Liu and I planned to go into the tea and silk business, so we kept looking at shops. Before the Dragon Boat Festival, we went out of town again, and by the time we returned, the festival had already passed. "Miss Shin, you're back," Manager Liu said with a smile. "We thought you'd return on the day of the Dragon Boat Festival. The general waited for you to have dinner and stayed up until midnight." I was taken aback, wiping the sweat from my forehead. "Waiting for me," Manager Liu confirmed. "It was my oversight. Is the general at home?" "Yes, he is." I went back to my room to change my clothes and immediately took the gift to find Gu Yenji. Pushing open the door to his study, I smiled and said, "General, I've brought you." The words that followed were left unspoken, because I realized that the person in the study was not him, but Dai Sichu. My heart skipped a beat. The person I had been waiting for had finally appeared. Dai Sichu was Gu Yenji's childhood playmate and also the former lover of Consort Zhuang before she entered the palace. Later, when Consort Zhuang was selected to enter the palace, their relationship came to an end without any resolution. Afterward, Dai Sichu traveled alone across the length and breadth of the country, writing many travelogues that earned him great prestige among the people. He was away for many years when suddenly one day he returned to the capital. After his return, he frequently visited Gu Yenji and later became acquainted with the third prince. It was because of him that the third prince rebelled. After the rebellion failed, Dai Sichu, on his deathbed, kept murmuring the name of the imperial concubine Zhuang, uttering nonsense about not being able to be together in life. When I heard it at the time, I found it utterly ironic. The third prince's rebellion, the involvement of Gu Yenji, and the countless innocent lives lost all because of love, just to have a chance to meet the woman he loved one last time in his lifetime. When Dai Sichu saw me, he also paused for a moment. "You are Miss Shin, the second daughter." I nodded. Dai Sichu should be 22 this year, the same age as Gu Yenji, and 2 years younger than the imperial concubine Zhuang. Due to his frequent travels, his skin was a bit tanned, but his looks and demeanor were no less impressive. No wonder in my previous life, people joked that Dai Sichu was a deeply affectionate and handsome man. "Please have a seat," Dai Sichu said warmly. "I've heard that Miss Shen II runs a large business and has the ability to turn stone into gold with her hands. I've always been curious about what kind of woman could possess such capabilities. Seeing you today has truly broadened my horizons." I smiled. "You flatter me, Mr. Dai." Dai Sichu looked surprised. You know me, I nodded. Mr. Dai is quite famous. I've also had the pleasure of reading the travelogues you've written. Dai Situ became even more enthusiastic, so much so that he even got up and sat beside me, passionately discussing business. I felt a spark of inspiration and smiled, saying, "Sir, with your extensive travels and broad knowledge, you would have a greater advantage in business than I do." Dai Situ's eyes lit up. "Indeed. That is my intention. Over the years, with more travels, my knowledge has grown. I always feel that in one's life, one must do something, leave something behind for future generations, otherwise, coming and going like a gust of wind, leaving no trace, would be a great regret. I think the same way. Even if I have money in hand, if the country is in trouble in the future, contributing even a small effort would make this life worthwhile." He seemed to have found a kindred spirit, and we clicked immediately, his eyes full of admiration. "Actually, now that Jiyu Yenji has returned to the court, the third prince is better disciplined than in my previous life, and the influence of Dai Situ is minimal. However, just to be safe, it's better for me to keep an eye on him. Therefore, I'll find him something to do. When people are busy and have new pursuits, love and romance are no longer the sole focus of life, he probably won't incite the third prince to rebel anymore." We were chatting happily when Jiyu Yenji returned. "Do you two know each other, Yenji?" Dai Situ said with delight. "You have such a wonderful lady like the second miss hidden at home. I truly regret not meeting her sooner." Jiyu Yenji looked at me in surprise. "Mr. Dai is humorous and well-read. It would be my good fortune to do business with him. Today, I'll treat us to a meal at Yefeng Tower," Dai Situ said with a smile. "Miss Second must grace us with her presence." Of course, I agreed to his invitation. Dai Situ thought of something again. "Yenji, if you have something to do, go ahead and attend to it. I'll have a meal with the second miss, and we can talk when you're free." Jiyu Yenji frowned, glanced at me, and said sullenly, "You're going to have a meal with him?" I nodded. He seemed a bit unhappy. As I got up to leave, he called out to me again, "What's that in your hand?" "Oh, a gift for the general, a pendant to be worn on the belt." I handed it to him, and he accepted it with effortless grace, then glanced at Daisitu's empty hands, a smug smile curling at the corners of his mouth. I apologized to him in a low voice. "I didn't make it back on the Dragon Boat Festival, and I kept you waiting, General. I truly am sorry." He immediately pulled a stern face and said urgently, "Who said I was waiting for you? I wasn't. I have something to attend to, so I'm heading out first," he said, turning back to look at Dai Situ. "I've arranged a place for you to stay." "You're not allowed to stay here," Dai Situ muttered. "I always stayed at your place when I came back before. Why won't you let me stay now?" 11 Dai Situ and I chatted all afternoon, made some plans, and went to Yefeng Tower for dinner in the evening. Just as we sat down, Jiyu Yenji arrived. I noticed that the pendant I had given him at noon was now hanging at his waist, matching perfectly with his newly changed clothes. Dai Situ was quite surprised. "Didn't you have to go on a business trip? Haven't you left yet?" "I won't be going out for now." Jiyu Yenji stroked the ornament at his waist and sat down beside me, his gaze falling on the sugar-fried chestnuts by my hand. I smiled and said, "Mr. Dai bought them for me. Would you like some, General?" He frowned. "Do you like chestnuts?" I nodded. He silently took the paper bag, methodically peeling and eating the chestnuts. In the blink of an eye, he finished the entire bag. I was utterly astonished, but he calmly said, "I've finished them. I'll buy you another pack later." "Oh," I could only nod. The dignified Jiyu Yenji fighting with me over chestnuts. No one would believe it if I told them. "When did you start liking chestnuts?" Dai Situ asked, puzzled. "When we were kids, you wouldn't even eat them, saying they were too much trouble." Jiyu Yenji glanced at him. "People change." Dai Situ looked at him with a strange expression. After the meal, Jiyu Yenji took me to buy 10 bags of chestnuts. After that day, Jiyu Yenji, who was usually very busy, for some reason suddenly found himself with a lot of free time. Whenever Dai Situ came to the house, he would always return. I had no mind to pay attention to him either, as I was constantly busy with the business in the capital. Previously, we hadn't opened any shops in the capital, but now we've opened 2 in a row. One is a medicine shop, and the other is a tea house. The medicine was sourced through Dai Sichu's connections, which I didn't have access to. As for the tea, opening a shopfront was just for show. Our main business was supplying to the noble families when things got busy. We were constantly on our feet. Dai Sichu was highly capable, especially skilled in dealing with people. His silver tongue could spin a tale 8 feet tall, and I truly admired him for it. Tea alone won't suffice. Do you mean to add silk as well? Have you managed to secure connections with all the noble families? I asked. What's so difficult about that? Dai Sichu replied with a smile. If the second young miss wishes to become a royal merchant, I can make that happen too. A great talent, sir. I bowed respectfully, and Mr. Liu was equally impressed. The world admires Mr. Dai, and while I was skeptical before, now I see that I was indeed short-sighted. Mr. Dai, Mr. Liu, and I discussed traveling to Jiangnan mid-year to finalize the silk suppliers. Upon returning to the general's residence, I informed Jiyu Yenji about my upcoming trip to Jiangnan. His brows furrowed deeply. Why can't he and Mr. Liu go? Why does it have to be you? I was busy with the accounts when I stopped and looked at Jiyu Yenji. I might as well learn from Mr. Dai. His business skills are superior to mine. Jiyu Yenji sat across from me, holding a book with a stern face, lost in thought, and didn't speak for a long time. Before heading to Jiangnan, a major event occurred. Consort Zhuang was released from the Cold Palace. I observed Dai Sichu's reaction. Everything seemed as usual for him, but Consort Zhuang was restless and began stirring up trouble as soon as she left the Cold Palace. I sometimes think it's understandable. Back then, when they were siblings relying on each other for survival, if Lady Zhuang hadn't been a bit fierce, they probably wouldn't have made it. Invite me to the palace. I looked at Manager Liu, feeling puzzled. Is there something the lady needs to instruct me on? Manager Liu stopped halfway through his sentence. Probably about the general's marriage. Jiyu Yenji is away on official business and not in the capital. I have reason to suspect that Lady Zhuang is taking this opportunity to call me to the palace. I couldn't refuse, so I tidied up and prepared to enter the palace. Before entering the palace, Dai Sichu suddenly came to see me, hesitating and not speaking, and eventually left with a flick of his sleeve. This was the second time I saw the noble consort Zhuang. The first time was in my previous life, after when Qinghe was promoted to the chief minister. When I saw her at the Empress's banquet, that banquet left a deep impression on me because she splashed wine all over the face of the noble consort Liang and was reprimanded by the emperor. I was immediately astonished. Lady Zhuang had been in and out of favor in the harem for over a decade, even being sent to the Cold Palace twice. Yet why was she still so easily provoked to anger? My impression of Lady Zhuang that time was entirely based on her personality. Her beauty didn't leave much of an impression on me, but today, upon seeing her, I was struck by her beauty. No wonder someone from humble origins, barely literate, had once reigned supreme in the harem. This face alone was enough to captivate even me. It makes sense, with Jiyu Yenji being such a handsome younger brother. How could his sister be any less? The consort Zhuang spoke very directly, her words quick. This concubine intends to find a wife of equal standing for Yenji. It's inappropriate for you to stay in his home without a proper title or status. This way, I'll give you 3 days to move out of the general's residence. You are not to contact or interact with Yenji until after he is married, lest you ruin his marriage. If you agree, I will still respect you a bit. If you don't agree, I have plenty of ways to deal with you. She set down her teacup with a clink, her sharp gaze fixed on me. If you like him and can't let go, I'm not saying I won't give you away. Wait 3 to 5 years, until his legitimate son is born and grows up, and then I'll take the initiative to raise you to the position of his concubine. What do you think? Say something. Will you? You're like a mute gourd, the imperial concubine Zhuang said with a frown. What could I say? I could only agree. I dare not disobey the Empress's decree, but before leaving the general's residence, I need to wait for the general to return and report to him for it to be proper. I replied as I stood up. She waved her hand. You go your own way. He won't miss you. I know my brother best. He's been cold since childhood and has no real feelings for anyone. Don't harbor any inappropriate thoughts about him either. Your statuses are worlds apart. He won't like you. I still nodded in agreement after saying all this. Consort. Zhuang had someone escort me away. Returning to the general's residence, Dai Sichu was still there, urgently asking what I had talked about with the imperial concubine Zhuang. I told him everything the imperial concubine Zhuang had said. He gave a smile that looked worse than crying. She hasn't changed at all. Still so straightforward. I paused and looked at him. He scratched his head, a bit nervous. I've liked her since I was a child. Thought she was beautiful and capable. As I grew older, I dreamed of marrying her. Dai Sichu sighed. But fate plays tricks. Someone eager to curry favor with the emperor gave her 5,000 taels to enter the palace. Without a second thought, she gave all 5,000 taels to Yang Ji and left with them that very day. For so many years, I've always wanted to say goodbye to her. Every time in my dreams, I chase after her, calling out sister, asking her why she didn't bid me farewell when she left. All these years, I wonder if she ever thought of me, even once. The affection from his youth became his obsession, and I let out a soft sigh. I think for her, love was never as important as a steamed bun to fill her stomach. You grew up without worrying about food or clothing, but at a young age, she had to take care of two people's bellies. She simply had no time or energy to dwell on emotions. Dai Sichu looked up at the sky. After a long while, he wiped the tears from the corner of his eye and said with a sigh, "You're right, all these years, I've been too stubborn. What would it matter even if I saw her again, whether she remembers me or not? What difference would it make? There are many people in her life she needs to consider, but I am certainly not one of them." I handed him a handkerchief, but he waved it off. "Talking to you has lightened my heart a lot, but these are secrets. You mustn't tell anyone, not even Jiyu Yenji." I shushed him. "Don't worry, I won't tell a soul." Dai Sichu smiled and patted my head. "You're such a clever little thing. If Yenji doesn't like you, it's his eyes that have a problem." I think so too. There's something off about the eyes of that brother and sister. We laughed together. Just as we were laughing, Jiyu Yenji returned. He stood at the door, looking at us with a displeased expression. 12. Aren't you supposed to be heading to Jiangnan? Why haven't you left yet? Jiyu Yenji pushed Dai Sichu aside and stood between us. "I'm waiting to leave with Rongrong," Dai Sichu replied. "Otherwise, if I go, she'll be lonely all by herself. She has no family, and no one would ask if she's warm or cold." Jiyu Yenji's expression darkened even further. "She's staying at my place, so of course I'll take care of her." Dai Sichu shot back. "Have you been taking care of her? Since when do you know how to care about others? You never learned how to, even as a child." Jiyu Yenji wanted to say something, his lips twitching several times, but he couldn't manage to refute it because what Dai Sichu said was the truth. "You can leave now." Jiyu Yenji dismissed him. I felt the atmosphere was off and decided to step away for a moment. "Well, I'll go cook. I'll help you." Dai Sichu slipped away as well. I made 4 dishes, and when they were served, Jiyu Yenji's expression grew even darker. "Why are they all spicy?" Jiyu Yenji had been injured before, and the doctor had warned him not to eat spicy food. However, Dai Sichu's taste was quite heavy. "These are all my favorites," Dai Sichu said happily, eating with his head down. Jiyu Yenji didn't touch a single bite. I spoke cautiously. "Should I go and cook a bowl of noodles for the general?" He smirked slightly. "Sure." I had no choice but to go cook noodles for him. Just as I was busy, he appeared at the kitchen door. "Did Consort Zhuang summon you to the palace today?" "Yes. I was just about to discuss this with you." I recounted Consort Zhuang's words to him. His brows furrowed tightly. "So, you're planning to move out?" "Yes. The 2-year agreement I made with the general is almost up, so it's a good time to move. Once I've finished with this busy period, I plan to head to the northwest to find my parents." "I've never thanked you," I said softly. "I know about you taking care of my parents." He didn't speak. "Since my rebirth, I haven't asked about my parents and elder brother, because I know they are being taken care of by Jiyu Yenji, safe from harm and not suffering any hardships in my previous life. After our family fell into trouble, I was frantic with worry. I urgently sought out my father's advisor, Mr. Liu, hoping to beg him to save my family. Mr. Liu said that he also found people to help, but their abilities were limited, and they could do very little. Therefore, I worked tirelessly to assist Wen Qinghe, hoping he would rise in rank soon. so he could use his position to save my family. When I finally managed to find out about my father, brother, and mother the following year, I learned that they not only had not suffered but were living very well. I never knew who was secretly helping them. It wasn't until Gu Yenji's incident that I learned from Mr. Lu that it was Gu Yenji who had helped us. He not only helped my parents but also arranged for my sister and me to be bought from the brothel and supported when Qingha's career in officialdom. All intentionally, he did these things without seeking anything in return. It wasn't until after his death that I learned from my father. In other words, if it weren't for Gu Yenji in my previous life, my entire family wouldn't have survived, let alone had the chance to reunite. Therefore, in this life, I want to repay his kindness with equal kindness. A kind and warm-hearted person should not be treated coldly by the world. Now, the two things that changed his fate are different from the previous life, and I no longer have a reason to stay by his side. 13. Rongrong, Dai Sichu served me food and poured me wine. When we go to Jiangnan, I'll take you to enjoy delicious food and beautiful scenery. He went on and on about Jiangnan. For some reason, he was particularly excited tonight, and he kept calling me Rongrong, which gave me goosebumps as I listened. I suddenly glanced at Gu Yenji, whose face was ashen, and he abruptly knocked on the table. Dai Sichu, come with me for a moment. Dai Sichu's voice abruptly stopped. Can you wait a moment? I still have something to say to Rongrong. Gu Yenji stood motionless at the door. Dai Sichu dared not disobey, bowing his head as he followed behind Gu Yenji. After a while, Gu Yenji returned, but Dai Sichu was nowhere to be seen. Where is he? I asked. He has urgent business and needs to travel for a few days. Gu Yenji replied without changing his expression. Do you like him? I was taken aback and shook my head. No, he's just a friend I get along with. Why do you ask, General? Gu Yenji's expression lightened up. It's nothing. Just asking casually. I lowered my head to eat. After a while, he suddenly said, I've already told Zhuang Fei, I'll marry whoever I want, and she doesn't need to interfere. If she summons you in the future, just ignore her. Oh, I was startled and looked up at him. Who is the general going to marry? He looked at me, then suddenly tapped my head. Eat your food. A few days later, I informed Gu Yenji and set off for Jiangnan with Mr. Lu. As soon as I left the capital, I saw Dai Sichu squatting by the roadside. You were supposed to be out on business. Why are you squatting here? Dai Sichu gave me a resentful look. Gu Yenji was jealous, so he kicked me out. I was stunned. He was jealous. Dai Sichu poked my forehead. One of you is awkward, the other is foolish. My heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Gu Yenji likes me? Let's go. The sooner we leave, the sooner we return. When we come back, we can drink at your wedding feast. Dai Sichu chuckled. I looked back toward the capital, my emotions suddenly in turmoil. The journey south went smoothly. After securing several suppliers, we also took some time to enjoy ourselves. By the time we returned, 2 months had already passed. While in Jiangnan, I sent a letter to my parents along with some gifts, telling them I would visit them by the end of the year. Dai Sichu chartered a boat. The boat moved at a leisurely pace, and the scenery along the way was quite pleasant. When we docked midway to have a meal, we suddenly overheard people discussing the Prince of Liang. Last month, the Prince of Liang and his eldest son died together. His remaining 7 sons are now in a fierce dispute, and Fenglin is in chaos. It's best not to go there. I was startled and listened carefully. The person said, how did he die so suddenly? What happened? It said it was over a concubine of the Prince of Liang, a woman surnamed Shin. She got involved with the heir, and the Prince of Liang found out. The speaker sighed. The father and son probably had a fight, and in the end, both died. The storyteller painted a vivid picture, making it sound even more dramatic than a play. Your sister, Dai Sichu asked me softly. I also felt that the concubine in the rumors was likely to be my sister. The day we returned to the capital and disembarked, the weather was nice. We found a restaurant to eat, and when I went out to wash my hands, a figure flashed by in front of me. I didn't get a clear look, but when I returned, someone suddenly struck me from behind with a stick. After that, I knew nothing. 14. When I was awakened by a splash of cold water, it was already midnight. After surveying my surroundings by the moonlight. I knew this was my family's old house before my father's promotion. Our whole family lived here, and I am very familiar with this place. Moreover, in my previous life, my sister and I perished together right here. My sister stood before me, sneering. This life doesn't count, let's start over, again. I leaned back in my chair, glancing at her. If you had to choose once more, who would it be? She leaned in close to me, her eyes wild. Gu Yenji. Aren't you just helping him because of your memories from a past life, making him see you differently? I can do that too. Gu Yenji will like me, will be good to me. I laughed. And if that doesn't work, how many times are you planning to be reborn? Or are you so sure that heaven will give you a third chance? Do you know the difference between us? She squinted at me, her eyes brimming with killing intent. I spoke slowly and distinctly. No matter how many times you are reborn, you only ever act for your own gain, whether you seek to claim Gu Yenji or Wen Qinghe. Everything you do is purely for yourself, not for myself, but for you. My sister lit the fire starter. Die. I want to choose again. I want to choose again. I want to choose again. She repeated it over and over. Throwing the fire starter onto the straw stack soaked with tung oil, I closed my eyes. If I really die today, I have no regrets. I have repaid Gu Yenji's kindness, and he will surely continue to take care of my parents and siblings for me. The fire flared up, and suddenly my sister grew afraid. She ran outside, shouting, "Why should I die? If you die, I can take your place. I don't need to die. I don't have to die." She rushed toward the door but suddenly retreated, stepping back slowly, one step at a time. General, you've come to save me, haven't you? I know you must have remembered our past life. You must still have feelings for me. Gu Yenji glanced at her coldly, then turned and walked over to me. I looked up at him, momentarily speechless. He lifted me up in his arms and carried me outside. The fire had scorched the roof, and the house collapsed with a thunderous crash. My sister was inside, screaming for help, her voice gradually fading away. General. I looked at Gu Yenji as if in a dream, unsure whether the dream of my past life was real or if this moment was real. He nodded and asked, "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, but the next moment, I still fainted. In his arms when I woke up again, Gu Yenji was sitting by my bed. The light was dim, and he was leaning against the chair, playing with the pendant I had given him. Seeing that I was awake, he said hoarsely, "Are you thirsty? Do you want some water?" Yes, I nodded. He helped me sit up to drink, then supported me to lean against the headboard. In a low voice, he said, "The doctor has checked. The injury isn't serious. You'll recover in a few days with some rest." How did the general know we were there? I asked him. Just a guess, he said casually, then reached out to touch my hair. Is everything settled in Jiangnan? I nodded. What are you busy with next? Planning to visit your parents in the northwest? I nodded again. Then I'll go with you. I also want to pay my respects to them, he said solemnly. I looked at him in surprise and was about to speak when Dai Sichu pushed the door open. Rongrong, how are your injuries? It's all my fault for being careless, otherwise, this wouldn't have happened. It's not your fault. If she wanted to go crazy, she would have found an opportunity anyway. Dai Sichu sat by the bed, glancing at me and then at Gu Yenji. Yenji, what did you just say about going to the northwest? A son-in-law paying respects to his father-in-law? Don't talk nonsense. I glared at Dai Sichu, who was being utterly unrestrained with his words. Gu Yenji looked at me and said softly, "I'm not just here to pay my respects, I also want to formally propose to Lord Shen." My face instantly heated up. It seems I really will be drinking wedding wine soon. I need to think about what generous gift to give. Dai Sichu left with a mischievous grin. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. Gu Yenji cleared his throat softly and asked me, "How about going next month?" Going to propose next month, do you think that's okay? I turned my head away, not looking at him, my heart pounding. He held my hand and said, "I've prepared quite a bit during this time. Once you're feeling better, you can see if you're satisfied." "What have you prepared?" I asked, looking at him in surprise. "The matter of our wedding, and the ceremony to meet your parents." He spoke softly. "You've already prepared for it. When did you start?" His eyes flickered, his grip on my hand not loosening, and his ears gradually turned red. After a long while, he muttered, "A long time ago." Pausing, he added, "Do you want to go see it?" I burst out laughing. Of course I want to see. Getting married is such a big deal. I have to handle it carefully. Gu Yenji's side story. I lost my parents when I was young. For as long as I can remember, I've only had my sister by my side to keep me alive. She endured a lot of hardship, which inevitably made her more straightforward and fiery than most women. If she were just an ordinary woman, it wouldn't matter. But unfortunately, he entered the palace and became a concubine, and her temperament became her weakness. After she entered the palace, I worked very hard to study martial arts and literature, wanting to become someone who could help her as soon as possible. I succeeded, but by then, my sister had already endured much suffering in the harem. Sometimes I think it's a good thing that my sister is confined in the cold palace. With her temperament, she might live longer there. So, when the emperor imposed punishment, I made no amends. It was fine this way. Both she and I could live, but her affairs implicated Shen Jihao. The reason I went to the teaching institute was out of guilt. Shen Jihao was an upright official and honest man, though perhaps a bit too unyielding, which inevitably earned him envy. Due to the palace intrigues, someone dragged him into it, fabricated a charge against him, and then countless others piled on, reducing him from a third-rank official to a prisoner. I secretly arranged everything for him and also properly settled all the female relatives of the Shen family who were sold into slavery. Only the two young ladies from the Shen family in the teaching institute were being closely watched, so I had to choose between them. It doesn't matter which one of them follows me. For the rest of her life, I will protect her until she decides she wants to leave on her own. After I left, it seemed that Miss Shen, the eldest daughter, did not want to be bought by me. She pushed Shen Rong towards me, so I took her with me. That day when we left the teaching institute, she followed me from a distance. I thought she would cry or be fearful, but she walked very calmly, always maintaining her dignity, as if she was fully confident about the future. This is quite interesting. She has a very stubborn temper. On her first day entering the mansion, she got into a fight 1 against 7 and was quite fierce. It reminded me of my sister, who has been like that since childhood, and even after entering the imperial harem, she would resort to violence at the slightest disagreement. So I punished Shen Rong to make her remember, using violence is not a praiseworthy method. I thought she had learned her lesson and would be quieter in the future, but I never expected her to disguise herself as a man to visit Mr. Liu. The moment I saw her, I knew it was Shen Rong. She also played coy, giving a man's name. However, her chess skills are good, and her cooking is excellent. When I exposed her disguise and she looked at me in shock, I thought of her first day's composed expression, and the contrast made me laugh. I told her that she didn't need to waste her efforts on me, as I had no intention of getting married or involving anyone else. I cannot even control my own life and death, so how could I marry and have children, only to bring them harm? But she persisted, bringing me soup every day and setting a 2-year deadline with me. I didn't mind. She could stay if she wanted, and besides, the soup she made was delicious. Strangely, though, after that day, it seemed she had achieved her goal and never brought me soup again. I couldn't bring myself to ask why she stopped, so I walked past her courtyard a few times, but she seemed completely unaware. Oh well, no soup doesn't mean no food. But she came again in the evening, smiling and trying to please me as she had in the past few days. I was a bit angry, but seeing her smiling face, all my anger vanished. Forget it. Why bother arguing with her? Lady Wang sent an invitation. In the past, I would have refused, but for some reason this time, I really wanted her to go. She is the second daughter of the Shen family, from a scholarly household. It was only because of someone scheming that she ended up in this situation. So, I want her to appear before everyone, to show them that even as a prisoner, she is living well. But she seemed not to care, focusing only on chatting with Lady Yang. Later, I found out it was all for me. She said she liked golden pheasants and asked me to bring one back for her. That day, for some reason, I hunted countless animals but couldn't find a golden pheasant. In the end, I had to trade 2 deer for a live chicken. Eagerly, I carried the golden pheasant, feeling like a young lad. especially looking forward to seeing her face when she ran towards me. I thought she was going to hug me, but instead, she only noticed the golden pheasant. She praised the pheasant profusely, then turned around and told Liu Yu to stew the chicken later. Every time she said she liked me and praised me, I would think of that chicken. When I was reinstated to my official position, she cooked a whole table of dishes, looking even happier than I was, and excitedly called me her family's general. Her family's general. That day I got drunk, and the next day I quietly asked Liu Yu to prepare for the wedding. Dai Sichu appeared, and they got along very well. She smiled much more with him than she ever did with me. I couldn't stand Dai Sichu. She even suggested moving out. I knew that my sister's suggestion was just an excuse. She wanted to move out herself. Until this moment, I began to regret, realizing I shouldn't have spoken so confidently back then about not feeling anything for her, about not marrying. I didn't know how to bring it up. Restless day and night. The words were right at the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't say them. After she went to Jiangnan, the people I sent to protect her kept sending me news about her. She was traveling and having a great time. Although I wanted to see her, knowing she was happy, I felt I shouldn't be selfish. A woman's life is often dull, and having such an opportunity and experience is rare. That day, I calculated the time and knew she had disembarked at the dock, but I waited for a long time without any news of her return. Later, I found out she had gone missing. I searched many places, turning the capital inside out several times, until someone came back with news that their traces had been found at the old Shen family residence. Fortunately, she was unharmed. However, Shen Qing had always spoken of matters concerning past lives and the present. After the fire that night, when she was barely clinging to life, she explained the whole story to me in detail. She said that both sisters had past lives and present ones, and in the past life, it was Shen Qing whom I took away, while Shen Rong married Wen Qinghe. Shen Qing says that in my past life, I liked her and doted on her, but I don't believe it. Even if I know nothing about my past life, it's impossible that I liked her, but I still felt uneasy inside. So I made a special trip to the prison. Wen Qinghe was half dead, crouching in the corner, but his face was quite handsome. This person, in my past life, actually married Shen Rong. He was sentenced to beheading, but I protected him and also ensured Shen Qing's life was sustained. As long as I am alive, neither of them will die. Marrying Shen Rong, is Wen Qinghe even worthy? After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.